The story begins in a bustling town, surrounded by hills and green fields, where the sound of everyday life fills the air. At the heart of the town stood a grand mansion, far larger than any other house around. Its towering walls seemed to touch the sky, and its golden gates gleamed in the sunlight, marking it as the home of the wealthiest man in the region, Musa, a man whose fortune was whispered about in every corner of the land. Musa had built his wealth from trading in precious jewels, rare spices, and valuable land. His mansion was a palace, full of luxury, gilded furniture, exotic birds, servants at his beck and call, and lavish meals every day. Despite his outward grandeur, there was something unsettling about Musa. He had grown increasingly isolated in his wealth, preferring to stay within the walls of his mansion, away from the world that had once known him. Yet, one thing Musa lacked was companionship. He surrounded himself with servants, but there was no one to challenge him, no one who could match his wit or strength, no one who could fill the emptiness inside him. Meanwhile, just outside the gates of his mansion, there was a young woman named Zara. She had come from a modest background, where days were filled with hard work, and dreams were often put on hold. Zara was intelligent and resourceful, always thinking several steps ahead, but she had known only struggle. Though her heart longed for more, she never allowed herself to feel weak. Zara had heard stories of Musa's mansion, of the riches inside, and while many believed him to be a man of power, she saw it differently. She saw an opportunity, one that could change her life forever. One evening, as Zara walked through the village, deep in thought, Musa happened to notice her from the windows of his mansion. His eyes lingered on her for a moment longer than he would have liked to admit. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was something more, her confidence, her aura of independence, that caught his attention. Musa had met many women in his time, but none like Zara. There was something about her that intrigued him, something about her strength that made him feel the need to bring her closer. Musa decided, then and there, that he would offer Zara a life she could never imagine, an offer too tempting to refuse. He would bring her into his mansion, and she would be part of his world, a world he could control and shape as he wished. Musa had always prided himself on being the one who held power in any situation, but something told him that Zara was different. The next day, a servant arrived at Zara's doorstep, offering a message from the mansion. "The master invites you to live with him in his mansion," the servant said. The message promised comfort, luxury, and a life without struggle. Zara, though cautious, knew that this was a chance she couldn't ignore. Little did she know that this invitation would lead her into a world where she would be more trapped than free, and where her strength and intelligence would be tested in ways she never expected. This was the beginning of Zara's journey, the start of a story that would unfold in ways no one could have predicted. Zara stepped through the grand gates of the mansion with wide eyes, her heart filled with both excitement and unease. The mansion before her was like nothing she had ever seen. Tall, ivory columns supported the roof, which was covered in intricate carvings that seemed to tell stories of distant lands. The grounds were lush with colorful flowers and exotic trees, their sweet scent filling the air as she walked down the pathway. The servants, dressed in fine attire, greeted her with respectful bows, and Zara was led into the grand hall where Musa awaited her. Musa stood by the fireplace, his figure imposing yet inviting, a smile on his face that appeared warm but masked something deeper. His voice was smooth as he welcomed her into his home, offering her comfort, luxury, and every material thing she could ever wish for. He led her to a beautiful room with golden curtains that hung from the windows like drapes of the sun itself, a large four-poster bed covered in silks, and a table laden with fruits and sweet pastries. At first, Zara was enchanted by the splendor of it all. The food was unlike anything she had tasted, and the bed felt like a cloud beneath her. She marveled at the art on the walls, the fine rugs beneath her feet, and the abundance of treasures surrounding her. She couldn't deny that she was living a life she had only ever dreamed of. However, as Musa promised her a life of ease, something in the back of her mind began to stir. Though she was surrounded by luxury, there was a strange emptiness, a sense that she wasn't free. Over the next few days, Musa kept her company but in ways that began to feel suffocating. He insisted on controlling her every move, telling her when to eat, what to wear, and even what to think. At first, his gestures seemed kind, small gifts, sweet words, and the promise of security, but soon, Zara realized that they were not just acts of generosity. They were a way of keeping her close, a way of asserting his power over her. The mansion, with all its beauty, became more like a gilded cage. Musa kept her isolated from the outside world, only allowing her brief visits to the gardens, and even then, under his watchful eye. The people she saw in passing, maids, servants, gardeners, seemed distant, mere shadows of the life she once knew. Musa filled her days with tasks that seemed trivial but were meant to exhaust her, arranging flowers, organizing priceless collections, learning etiquette. These tasks, though not impossible, were constant, and they drained her energy, leaving little room for anything else. Each time she attempted to ask about the world beyond the mansion walls, Musa quickly changed the subject or distracted her with another task. "There's no need for you to worry about such things," he would say with a reassuring smile. "You are here now. This is your home." Zara began to feel the weight of his words more and more each day. The mansion, once full of wonder, started to feel like a trap. The luxury that once dazzled her became her prison. She could no longer hear the sounds of the village, see the people she had known, or even speak freely. Her mind raced as she realized that, though Musa had promised her the world, what she had gained was not freedom but submission. The longer she stayed, the more she felt the walls of the mansion closing in around her. Musa's smile never faltered, but Zara could sense his intentions behind it. His wealth, once a beacon of opportunity, was now just a tool for manipulation. Every piece of jewelry, every soft garment, every perfectly prepared meal seemed like a reminder that she was bound by the riches that surrounded her. Musa's power wasn't just in the mansion, it was in her isolation, in her dependence, and in the growing sense that she had nowhere to turn. In the silence of her room at night, Zara could feel the weight of the trap settling around her. She had been promised a life of comfort, but all she had was luxury with no freedom. The mansion was beautiful, but it was now a gilded cage, and she was its unwilling prisoner. Yet, deep inside her, a flicker of resolve began to grow. Zara knew she was stronger than this, stronger than the walls around her, stronger than the man who thought he could control her. And she would find a way to prove it. As days turned into weeks, Zara's mind grew sharper, more alert to the patterns that Musa had woven around her. Though the luxury had initially dazzled her, she could now see through the glittering veil of wealth that masked his true intentions. Musa's charm was no longer captivating. It felt like a carefully constructed facade meant to make her feel indebted, even grateful for the life he had given her, yet, it was all a carefully crafted illusion of power. Zara began to observe Musa more closely. She noticed that, though he was always present in the mansion, his actions followed a strict routine. Each morning, he would have breakfast in his private study, reading the newspaper while his servants attended to his every need. His afternoons were filled with meetings with visitors or merchants, where he discussed deals and plans, rarely with her, unless it suited his purpose. Evenings were his time to unwind, and Zara noticed he would retreat to a private room, one that she had never been allowed to enter. It was his personal space, and it was kept off limits for reasons Zara was starting to suspect were more than just a desire for privacy. The more she observed, the clearer it became that Musa wasn't just wealthy, he was methodical, controlling, and used his wealth to create an environment where he was never questioned. Zara knew he didn't care for her beyond what she could provide for his pride in isolation. Her beauty and intelligence had simply been a way to keep her close, under his spell. But something in Zara had shifted. She was no longer the wide-eyed girl who had entered the mansion with dreams of a better life. Now, she was a woman who understood the price of those dreams, and she wasn't willing to pay it. One night, as Musa retired to his private quarters, Zara slipped from her room, her steps careful and quiet. The mansion seemed to sleep under a blanket of silence, the only sound being the soft rustle of leaves outside the windows. She made her way through the halls, avoiding the servant quarters and the guards at the entrances. Her senses heightened as she moved past the rooms she had learned to recognize. The layout of the mansion had become second nature to her, the long corridors, the winding staircases, and the many doors that had once seemed so unfamiliar. Eventually, she found herself near the area Musa often retreated to, a door at the far end of the mansion, hidden behind a tapestry of intricate beads. It was a door that she had seen only in passing, never fully explored. Tonight, however, she couldn't ignore the pull of curiosity. She gently pushed open the door, which creaked in protest, revealing a narrow staircase leading downward, dimly lit by a flickering torch at the far end. Her heart raced as she descended the stairs, the air growing cooler the further she went. The staircase opened into a hidden chamber, one that felt colder, darker than the rest of the mansion. The room was filled with strange, ancient-looking artifacts, masks, figurines, and large stone objects that seemed out of place in the modern grandeur of the mansion. But what caught her eye was a large, ornate chest tucked into a corner of the room. It was locked, but the key she had seen Musa use in his study lingered in her mind. She had noticed him placing it on a nearby table earlier that day, and a sudden thought struck her: if Musa kept a key to something important, this chest might be more than it seemed. Zara approached it slowly, her mind racing with possibilities. What was hidden here? What could it reveal? She had no doubt that this room and this chest were a secret Musa didn't want anyone to know about. Could this chest hold the key to her freedom? Or perhaps it contained something that would give her leverage over him? As she reached the chest, she heard footsteps echoing above. Panic surged through her, but she quickly stilled herself, slipping back into the shadows. The footsteps passed without stopping, and Zara exhaled in relief, realizing she had narrowly escaped detection. The chest, however, was still there waiting. Zara knew this was her moment. She made a mental note to return the next day, when the house was quieter and Musa was away. She had to learn what lay hidden beneath the surface of Musa's carefully crafted mansion. Her plan was starting to form, piece by piece, and the more she learned, the clearer it became. She was no longer a guest in this house, she was a prisoner, and soon, she would turn the tables on her captor. Her eyes gleamed with determination. She wouldn't remain a prisoner for long. Zara had the advantage now, and Musa would soon learn that underestimating her had been his greatest mistake. Zara knew that the time had come to put her plan into motion. She had spent days observing Musa, understanding his habits, and quietly gathering information. The secret room and the chest were key pieces to her escape, but she also needed to ensure that Musa would remain unaware of her growing resolve. Her greatest strength was her intelligence, and she would use it to her advantage, just as he had used his wealth and control over her. Over the next few days, Zara began to subtly change her behavior. She was always polite, always obedient, but her demeanor shifted in a way that made Musa more comfortable, more trusting. She had noticed that he was a man who thrived on control, and the more she played into his expectations, the more he let his guard down. He often praised her for her beauty, her intelligence, and how quickly she adapted to life in the mansion. He was so proud of his new companion, and Zara used this to her advantage, making him believe she was completely at his mercy, just as he had planned. She carefully engaged in conversations with him, always appearing to be fascinated by his stories of wealth and power. She listened intently to every word, never once letting on that she had already grown weary of his manipulation. Her subtle compliments flattered him, and she made sure to express gratitude for everything he had done for her, knowing it would further strengthen his belief that she was indebted to him. He had no idea that Zara was using his ego against him. Every time Musa would retire to his private quarters, Zara would make herself busy with tasks that seemed to please him, like rearranging his collections or preparing his meals, but with each passing day, her mind was focused on her escape. When Musa was in the garden, meeting visitors, or attending to business matters, Zara would slip away to the secret room in the basement, where she had begun to study the contents of the chest. She had found the key, and though it didn't unlock the chest completely, it allowed her to peek inside. She had discovered something unexpected: a map of the mansion, including secret passages that led to the outside world. This map could be her way out. She also found a journal that detailed Musa's past dealings, his enemies, and his most vulnerable secrets. But Zara wasn't ready to make a move just yet. She needed to prepare, to learn Musa's schedule inside and out. And most importantly, she needed to ensure that Musa felt comfortable enough to think that she had surrendered fully to his control. One afternoon, Musa asked Zara to join him for tea in the garden. She knew this was an opportunity to manipulate him further, to deepen his trust. They sat beneath a large tree, the sun filtering through the leaves, casting dappled shadows across the table. As they sipped tea, Zara allowed herself to appear vulnerable, speaking of how lonely she sometimes felt in the mansion, how she missed the warmth of human connection beyond the walls. She made sure her words were carefully chosen, expressing how grateful she was for the life he had given her, but subtly suggesting that perhaps they could be more than just a wealthy man and a grateful companion. Musa, ever the egotist, basked in her attention. He believed she had fallen for him, that she was enchanted by his power and wealth. In his mind, she was already under his spell, and it only made him more confident, more willing to give her the freedom to roam the mansion as she pleased. He let down his guard, believing she was loyal to him in a way that no one else had ever been. As the days passed, Zara carefully cultivated this illusion. She spent more time with him, laughing at his jokes, making him feel important, all the while secretly plotting her escape. She had gained his trust, and in doing so, she had also gained the freedom to explore the mansion at will. Musa no longer questioned her motives or her actions. He was convinced she had been won over by his wealth, his charm, and his promises of a life without struggle. What Musa didn't know was that Zara was playing a much longer game. While he believed she was completely under his control, she was quietly preparing for the moment when she would strike. She had already mapped out her escape route, had made mental notes of every weak spot in the mansion's security, and had familiarized herself with every servant and guard. She knew how to avoid them, when to slip away unnoticed, and most importantly, she knew that the time for action was drawing near. Musa's overconfidence had become his greatest weakness. He thought Zara was just another woman to control, another prize to add to his collection of possessions. But Zara had one thing that Musa did not, the determination to reclaim her freedom. The trap he had set to control her was now the very thing that would lead to his downfall. As the days passed, Zara knew that she was one step closer to escaping the mansion and turning the tables on the man who had thought he could manipulate her forever. The night of Zara's escape arrived with quiet precision. Musa, as usual, retired early to his private quarters, believing he was in complete control. He trusted her, and she had carefully constructed a perfect illusion of loyalty and dependence. Tonight, however, Zara had other plans. Using the secret passages she had discovered beneath the mansion, Zara quietly made her way to the hidden chamber one last time. She had gathered everything she needed: the map, a set of keys she had swiped from Musa's study, and a bag filled with a few essentials that would ensure her safety once she was outside the walls. The mansion was still, the silence broken only by the distant rustle of leaves in the night breeze. She unlocked the chest one final time and took what she needed: a small, ornate dagger hidden among the artifacts. It wasn't just a weapon, it was also a symbol of the power she had gained in the months of observation. Zara knew exactly what to do. She slipped out through the hidden passage, carefully avoiding the guards and servants, and made her way to the mansion's rear gates. The guards, as usual, were distracted by the late hours and their own conversations. Zara moved like a shadow, swift and silent, until she reached the outer wall of the mansion. With the keys in her hand, she unlocked a side door that led to the garden, and from there, to the main road that wound away from the mansion's grounds. She stepped into the cool night air, finally feeling the taste of freedom she had longed for. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Musa remained unaware of her disappearance. He had been so confident in his control over her that he failed to realize the quiet change that had been taking place in Zara. When he awoke the next morning, expecting to see her at his side, his shock and anger would be unimaginable. His prized possession, the woman he had thought he controlled, was gone. He rushed through the mansion, ordering the servants and guards to search for her, but it was too late. Zara had already escaped, using the very mansion he had built to imprison her against him. The rich man, once so proud of his wealth and power, was left standing in the cold, realizing that he had been outsmarted by the woman he had underestimated. Zara walked away from the mansion, her heart light and free, the cool night air filling her lungs as she left behind the life of luxury that had once trapped her. With each step, she felt more powerful, knowing she had outwitted the man who thought his wealth could control her. She didn't need the riches or the grandeur of the mansion; she had her own strength, her intelligence, and her determination. As she journeyed down the road, a new path ahead of her, she knew that she would create her own success, one built not on dependence but on the resilience she had discovered within herself. The world was hers to conquer, and no one would ever trap her again. The story ends with Zara's quiet smile, a symbol of her victory and empowerment, reminding all that intelligence and resolve can overcome even the most oppressive forces. She was no longer a prisoner; she was free.